answered the same way you did.
Really?
They both embraced it,
Yeah.
and they do to this day.
Sure.
And I think that's great. And that'll lead me into, you just did a film also within the past year, Necessary Evil. And on that were two actors that everyone in this room will know, Danny Trejo and Lance Henriksen, which I think are also have embraced the character actor point. Now,
Yes.
did you have scenes with either of those guys?
No, I was on set with Lance. I had no scenes with him. I saw Danny in passing, but I tipped my hat and tilt my head to Lance because he's a wonderful guy and a wonderful actor. And again, takes on that role quite gladly of character actor.
Yeah. That's why I brought them up, because I know you just worked.
Yeah.
Art, you have anything? Or?
Questions from the
audience have anything to ask? Yeah, go ahead.
In the whole of your career, what would you say your directors have valued most in you as an actor?
Well, thanks for the question. You know, if they have valued something, they haven't truly articulated it. Normally when you're hired to do something, somebody's looking at the body of work. Either I come in and audition with something, or they're familiar with my work, and they buy what they feel I can instinctively and intuitively bring to the role. I wish more directors were a little more verbose in terms of why we want you, why we love you, because it goes a long way to establishing trust and comfort on the stage or on screen, that I don't have to be wary or mindful of making a misstep. You know what I'm saying?
Now, what's that one role? An actor always has that one role. What's that one role that would really satisfy you as an actor?
Well, I got to tell you, I think I just netted it and took it on with David and Fatima.
Yeah, that's excellent.
If I had to
finally get that.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, it's so rare to get material that you can just sink into that's even meaningful. You know, I mean, there's so much crap that comes your way, and given the nature of what you have to do to earn your health insurance these days, which is tied into what you earn in terms of your capacity under the Screen Actors Guild, you can't afford to be as discriminating as you once were. But I'm thrilled to say that I could walk away at this point, given what I've laid down on film in David and Fatima, and to me that's a career accomplishment.
So you ask that question to actors, and so many of them can't answer it. That I think it's excellent. You have an answer for that. Dan, you had a question.
Yes, Alan, have you had a chance to see David Cronenberg's last two films? It's well known in horror film circles now. He's kind of went from being a horror director, and he's expounded himself.
He's expanding
diversified.
Yeah.
He's more into, like, I won't call it gangster, but like underground. The history of violence.
Well,
History of violence,
he's dealing with the mafia, just one that we haven't, just one Scorsese hasn't showed us.
Right.
It's just Russian mafia.
Right.
They're still
It's
genre films.
all the same. It's still a genre film. It's still, he's still pouring his heart into it. And if you've seen them, you know damn well they're beautifully done and brutal as hell. They have Cronenberg stamped all over them. The only thing missing is a venereal disease.
So what's your take on it, though? Have you seen him?
Yes, I have. I thought History of Violence was exquisite. And Viggo Mortensen, underrated, beautiful performance. My God. The camera places, all right, pardon my phraseology here, the camera cements itself on him, and just you catch his every thought, his every insight. I thought it was a beautiful, cherished performance. And at Harris, everybody's working in top gear. I was a little disappointed in Eastern Promises. And probably I thought it was a little sluggish in terms of its pacing. And I was a little surprised because I thought it was a little retro, David, in terms of, I mean, he's already achieved a master status as far as I'm concerned. So I thought it was a bit of I was surprised that he didn't top himself. But then again, I mean, History of Violence, it's like, where are you going to go from there? It was that exceptional a film.
And funny thing about bringing up Viggo Mortensen too, he's another guy, an actor who never had the roles he needed or deserved until he was in his 40s. I mean, he's just come into his own now as an actor, and he struggled for many, many years to find that role. And again, he's an excellent actor. So
but what is perhaps underappreciated is the subtlety with which this guy works.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know, it's just exquisite.
Yeah. And it,
But in both films, and I mean, look at those, look at the behavior and the characters. I mean, they're so diametrically opposed.
Oh, absolutely. I
You
thought he
know?
was great as Aragorn in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I love those movies.
Yeah.
Sure.
He was just
And that
so
was-
great. He made
yeah,
those
he
films.
was-
Yes,
He was the last time
absolutely.
cast, in fact.
Yeah.
In fact, he was a replacement for somebody that pulled out.
Right.
Yeah, which was amazing. I mean,
It
how
really
interesting
turned his career
would
around.
have been if he wouldn't have been in the role of Aragorn and the guy that was originally cast would have done it?
Uh-huh.
How would that have been better, or would it have the three films suffer?
Well, you never know, but the
Yeah.
reality is we're all replaceable somewhere along the line, you know?
Has anybody got a question for Alan? Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, it was mentioned in passing that you just worked on the film W. Could
Yes.
you talk about that experience a little bit?
I can, and it will be a little bit, only because it's a little bit of an experience. In that, I was only doing the voice of Vladimir Putin, and I had the generosity to just kick back in my place and do a conference phone call with both Oliver and Tandy Newton. What's Tandy's last name? Is it Tandy Newton?
Escaping me now.
And Brolin, God, where am I with names today? Josh Brolin.
Well, it's because
So-
you're in front of everybody. We always space two.
Is that it?
Yeah. Start
so-
asking the crowd. Sometimes they're more knowledgeable as this.
I'm sure. So we had like 2 days rehearsal. We rehearsed maybe a half hour to an hour each day, and it was a little tricky because very few Russian leaders that I'm aware of actually speak English, and Putin, the only piece that I could work off. I mean, when I auditioned for Oliver, I laid down basically my Russian accent, you know, doing classic Russian, this and that, blah, 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 blah. And he was intrigued by it, so we took it to another step, another plateau. And he said, well, can you do it this way? And I, with the benefit of watching Putin do his welcome to the Russian Olympics at a festival, there was something very odd going on because he doesn't speak like that. He speaks several languages. And when he breaks into English, it's not that typical what I just gave you. It's sort of some German come in here, some French come in here. So it's a bit of a Heinz 69 in terms of how he articulates and brings forth English. So the trick is I have very little to go on. You know, and I'm also, he speaks in a higher register, so I'm taking it up here, you know, you've got to go where the, and you know, I'm slanging it a little bit, and maybe, you're just trying to create where the diphthongs are and this and that, and hopefully creating the illusion that this is Vladimir Putin, you know? Thank you.
Anybody? Go ahead.
Well, I've seen a lot of David Cronenberg films. Well, they show them on regular television, but they often cut out the rest. But the Independent Film Channel, they showed a series a few years ago where they were showing lots of David Cronenberg films. But what I wanted to ask you about is your Russian heritage.
Yes.
Where does your family come from, and like, why did they come to Canada?
Well,
Deep.
thank you for the question. My parents are Canadian-born. I've got two grandparents who are from Odessa and Kiev on my on my maternal side. I've got a paternal grandmother who's from Romania, and I believe my paternal grandparent, although grandfather was born in Canada, is from somewhere in Russia as well. Why they came? A better life. I've got lots of those siblings of my grandparents. A number of them actually ended up in Philadelphia. So it has to do with hoping to achieve a better life. Certainly, growing up, I'm referring to my grandparents now. They were subject to the Russian pogroms, and I'm talking about beheadings here, and I'm talking about great violence. And you do what you have to do. You pick up, you put a knapsack over your shoulder, and you move on to find a better time, a better life.
The Tsar era.
Pardon me?
That'd be the end of the Russian
Well,
Tsar era. Is when they were
yes,
escaping.
yeah, and I believe my grandparents actually probably in 1917, 1918, the Russian Tsar was assassinated in 1917. The World War ends in 1918. And at that point, there's this great migration to the Americas, if you will. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Well,
I study a lot about Russia and about Jewish ancestry as well. But I have a Russian piano teacher and a Ukrainian violin teacher, so they're surprised at how much I know about their countries.
Well, good for you for your research and your education. I mean, it's just wonderful that we can bridge cultures like that.
By all means, we've got plenty of time. Anyone else have any questions, anything to say? Go ahead.
Sir.
Any bits of advice you would give to a young actor just starting out in the whole thing? What would you say?
Dear,
I know it's hard.
Well, no, it isn't hard. I mean, I'm perhaps a bit of a cynic. And I would say to you, if you can really find something that does it for you other than acting, you'll save yourself a lot of grief. I mean, if you can find some passion in something other than acting, which is so whimsical and so left to other people's devices, and so left to other people sitting back and judging you, and I've never been a fan of that at all. I've been a little too outspoken in my life, which is why maybe my career did not take the ascendancy that I wanted. But I've been outspoken, and I've said things that are on my mind. If you have a passion, and you've got to pursue it with all the zeal that you have, you got to do it. However, if you can take that and maybe find yourself a place on stage where you've got substantially more control than what happens in front of the camera in terms of editing and what have you, then you're perhaps better off. Does that help at all?
Yeah, sure.
Do you yourself as an actor prefer stage work over filmed work, whether it be TV or films themselves?
Well, again,
A lot prefer one or the other. Most
yeah.
are just happy for the work.
Yeah. Well, given the nature of where stage is at in Los Angeles, it pays diddly squat. So when I do stage, and I did my last play a couple of years ago, I do it for the love of it. I do it because I want to commit to it for 3 months or so, and so I'm making that commitment up front. And if something comes along in terms of a film commitment, I've got to say sorry, but I committed myself emotionally here, and I can't bail out. I do appreciate what I can do in front of a camera in terms of what intimacy is all about, in terms of what minimal gesture is all about. So I'd say my preference has been for a lifetime really, has been working in front of the camera.
And posterity, just for posterity reasons, it's always there too.
Yes.
Every filmed role you ever have should exist long after you're gone.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful little. I feel a lot of actors look at them as little tiny pieces too.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting, Ken, because only recently have I looked at what quote unquote legacy is all about.
Yeah, and the roles you've left, and you go back.
And thankfully, I can have some. I mean, aside from David's, and I'm really thrilled with the role and what I do in this picture. But thankfully, I've got something that I can cement it with in terms of a bookend now. So it's not just this very interesting horror picture.
Right. Yeah. One of your early films is now.
Yes.
Something
Yeah.
recent. Good.
Yeah.
And you had something else.
Like the last gentleman in the back of me answered, if you would recommend anyone in the audience here going into a different profession if they could.
Yeah.
That being said, what individuals who are actors or actresses inspired you to become one yourself and enter the profession when you were growing up?
Well, I have very few heroes, and I don't know if anybody consciously directed my pursuit. Although I could tell you, I've got this conscious memory when I was a youngster, 4, 5, 6, 7, sitting in front of the television on a Saturday afternoon, watching these movie musicals with an actor named Bobby Breen. Now, who knows about Bobby Breen? But apparently he was this child actor in Hollywood, probably preceded Richard Bartholomeus. Anybody? Bartholomew. So he was akin to Richard Bartholomew, but I don't think he was as celebrated. Although he was probably this male counterpart to Shirley Temple, is how I would view him. So I think maybe somewhere I plugged into this because I did a lot of musicals when I was coming up in high school and university. And I tried to train the singing voice. I didn't get very far, but I did the Fantastics. Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. How to Succeed in Business, and enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Classic plays that come around again and again.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Anything at all? Please. We've got nothing but time.
Senor.
Are there any actors or directors or teleplay, screenplay writers that you haven't worked with yet that you would really like to work with at this point?
Well, boy, I really would like to work with, I appreciate and I admire the old guard, which includes the likes of, he's still cranking out Sidney Lumet, you know, we just lost John Frankenheimer, but that's where my keenness, my pursuit, my enthusiasm takes me. Perhaps I'm locked into another generation. The younger guys, Judd Apatow, these guys, you know, they're kind of cocky. They're young Turks. They think they know it all, and I think they perhaps have a bit of an apprenticeship ahead of them before they can come in on the level of masterhood, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Some of the masters could take any genre. Well, we've been talking to Lamberto Bava. Look at his father. Spent so many years as a cinematographer, he just moved into directing duties so gracefully.
Yes.
It's just astounding. His films are always...
And graceful is a beautiful word to acknowledge. And let me just say this, perhaps as a parting shot. We just lost a wonderful Paul Newman.
Yeah.
And apparently, I heard the story secondhand, Paul Newman said to his daughter the week before he died, what a privilege it was to have been here on this planet. So if any of us have a bad moment during our lifetime, I think it's perhaps advisable to maybe plug into that rather insightful piece of wisdom that Mr. Newman passed on. And perhaps it lifts the fog.
True.
You know?
Guy asked me yesterday how business has been. I told him I was born broke. I plan on dying broke. It's the happiness I can get in between both that I'll remember.
Well, that's
Anybody else before we just talk? Our little
Have we
Droogie has a
seen you
question.
in any Star Treks or TV episodes of X-Files or anything?
No, you know, I auditioned.
CSI.
You did audition?
I did a CSI, yeah. I did a CSI, but, you know, would love to have done X-Files.
Uh-huh.
What was the first one you mentioned?
Like a
Star
Star
Trek.
Trek.